Hey book besties, it's Gracie, and today you're joining me from my cozy little corner on the couch for our first reading wrap up of 2025. Woo! I'm so excited to be back here sitting and filming this video. I did not end up doing a December reads video because I was out of the country. So it's been a couple of months since I've sat down and talked about all the books that I read in a month. I cannot wait to bring you these January reads because I had 12 reads this month and most of them were absolutely incredible. So I can't wait to share, hopefully give you some reading recommendations and hear from you guys in the comments down below what you're looking forward to most on your February TBR and what I should add to my February TBR. If you're new here, hi, I'm Gracie. I do books, travel, lifestyle, all that fun stuff. I'm based in Tampa, Florida, and I read 139 books last year. Are you kidding me? Do not take that as that I am some crazy reader. Okay, maybe a little bit in the last year, but before that, I'm not even sure if I've read 139 books in my life for pleasure. So last year was a bit of a challenge for me. I just decided that I wanted to pick up books more instead of watching TV or movies at night. And then it just grew into something that I absolutely love doing. So I hope if anything, this video inspires you to maybe put down social media or put down TV and movies, maybe just 1 or 2 nights a week and pick up a really good book. I'm telling you, it has been a game changer for my mental health. Although you can say some of these books, whew, they impact your mental health too. It is a roller coaster of emotions going on. But you know, in a general worldly sense, it is nice to disconnect from social media, from screens, from all of that and read a really good book. So I'm gonna give you some recommendations. We're gonna go over the reviews for the 12 books that I read this past month. As always, no spoilers. You will not learn anything more than you would from the back of the book or an Amazon description because I have learned from my past mistakes from my first few of these videos. And of course, I don't wanna give you any spoilers. Although if there are books you want spoilers on or things you want me to do throughout this year with books, I'd love to make an additional video a month about books. So a reading wrap up and something else, whether that's shopping for books, talking about books that's coming up, doing a reading vlog. You guys just let me know down below what you'd like. We have some good books stacked up here, so I'm gonna get started. If you're new here, make sure that you subscribe down below so that you do not miss another video. Oh, and before we jump into it, make sure that you add me on Goodreads. I add everyone back as friends. I'd love to see what you're reading. You can stay more up to date in real time with what I'm reading, and I will have that linked down below in the description. And let's get into it. I'm gonna go in no particular order, so let's start with this one. Rebecca Yarros, The Last Letter. I actually read 2 Rebecca Yarros books this month because if you know, January was the release date for Onyx Storm. We will get into that, the third in the Empyrean series of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. But anyway, Rebecca Yarros also writes other books. And let me tell you, I read one of her books in December called In the Likely Event. Amazing. This, The Last Letter, if you want a book that rips your heart out of your chest, stomps on it, throws it in the garbage, picks it back up, tosses it across town, and then tries to put it back inside of you, that's what this book is. And I loved every second of it, but I will say I didn't want any spoilers in my DMs, but these girls were like, I hope you have tissues. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't really know what I got myself into, but I'd seen it a lot on TikTok. We actually have a free little library in our building, which is so cute. It's like a little book swap. I leave books all the time. I take books sometimes. A lot of the times they're like, how to do sales and some random books that I think the older people in this building give away. But I know there's gotta be some girl down here. I think we keep swapping books back and forth, but this is one that I picked up from there. And oh my goodness, I didn't think I would really love like military stories or things that involve that, but I think I have found a new genre that I love. I was a sucker for this book. Every single second of it, I could not put this one down. It actually was one of my top 3 reads of the entire month. So let me tell you a little bit about it. This book follows Ella and her 2 twins that she is raising as a single mom in a small town in Colorado. Her brother is off in the military, and of course they write back and forth to each other. He says, hey, I have a buddy who needs a little extra love. Would you like an extra pen pal? And so she starts writing back and forth with this man. And they go back and forth many times. Unfortunately, Ella's brother does not make it, which literally is the first line on the back of this. So that is not a spoiler. And he basically says in his last letter to his friend, hey, if anything happens to me, I need you to go take care of my sister. So this is the story that unfolds after all of that. There is love, there is heartbreak, there is romance, there is just all the good feelings, all the sad feelings, all the sentimental sentimental feelings. It truly is a touching book. It's both a heartwarming and heart-wrenching book, but let me tell you, it deserves all the hype that it gets. So if there is one book that I tell you to pick up, it might just be this one from this month. I have read my third Kristen Hanna book this month. I read The Great Alone. I've read The Nightingale. I read The Women. I love both of those books. Again, historical fiction, like something I never thought I would be into, but I'm just so into her writing. Kristen Hanna's writing captivates you from the first sentence in the book. And this is a story about the Great Alone in Alaska and one woman's journey in Alaska, growing up and learning about how to live in the great outdoors with a unique family dynamic and unique neighbors. It's kind of like a found family and a romance, and there's just drama, and there's all sorts of good stuff in this book too. Really, really touching. Some great work from Kristen Hanna, and I'll read a little bit of the back from you so I don't spoil anything, because this is one of the first books that I read this month. It's 1974 in Alaska. The Albrights are in a family crisis. They are alone, living off the grid in a harsh and unforgiving wilderness. Ernst Albright has come home from the Vietnam War, a changed and volatile man, and has made the impulsive decision to move his wife and daughter north to America's last true frontier. Cora Albright will do anything for the man she loves, even if it means following him into the unknown. 13-year-old Lenny, caught in the riptide of her parents' passionate, stormy relationship, has little choice but to go along, daring to hope this new land promises her family a better future. Even though they have found a small, independent community of strong men and even stronger women, winter is approaching, darkness is descending, and Ernst's fragile mental state is deteriorating. Soon the perils outside pale in comparison to threats from within. Their small cabin, covered in snow, blanketed in 18 hours of night, Lenny and her mother learn the terrible truth. They are on their own. In the wild, there is no one to save them but themselves. This sweeping, unforgettable portrait of human frailty and resilience spans the decades in a place of incomparable beauty and danger, where a family learns the truth about the wilderness that lives in both man and nature. Okay, yeah, that definitely summed it up way better than I could. Such a good read. Don't let the thickness of the book fool you. You will fly right through this, wanting to know what happens next. This, of course, Kristen Hanna, I feel like can do no wrong at this point, and I just love her style of writing so much. Do yourself a favor and go pick this book up next month. One of the 2 audiobooks I listened to in the last month was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I saw listed on Goodreads that it was one of the top Goodreads books of last year that people read, and I was like, okay, I've read and listened to many Frida McFadden books. They're all good, right? Like, I'm not obsessed with Frida McFadden, not gonna lie, but I like something that's gripping, that's a thriller, that's a mystery, something that I really, when I'm listening to an audiobook, like want to hang on to the edge of every word listening to. And this was a good book. Would I say to pick this up over, let's just say, the previous 2 that I just talked about? No. But if this is your thing, I thought it was really interesting. Definitely better than The Teacher that I read last year. You read The Teacher, oh my goodness. It's a newlywed couple, Trisha and Ethan, who get stranded at this open house in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, I believe. And the previous owner who lived there and has passed away, they don't really know what happened to her, was a therapist, and she used her house as a therapist's office. There were definitely twists and turns in this book that I did not expect, but I believe I gave this 3 stars. Like, to me, that's just kind of like a, okay, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say, don't go pick it up, but I'm not telling you to rush to go pick up this book. There's a little bit of the story of that. They're just basically trying to uncover what happened as they're stranded in a snowstorm at this house. My first Adrienne Young book that I ever read was The Unmaking of June Farrow, which I think is one of the most underrated books of all time. I just have not heard a ton of people talk about that book. It was an immediate 5-star for me, and I'm like, okay, well, of course I've got to pick up another Adrienne Young book to see, like, was it just one that was amazing, or are all of her books amazing? This is Spells for Forgetting. I enjoyed this book. Nothing's gonna top The Unmaking of June Farrow. It's just not gonna happen. I love how Adrienne Young seamlessly integrates magic into very realistic plots and stories. It just makes things all the more interesting, and I thought that this one was really good. I actually read 2 Adrienne Young books this month. I guess I'll do the next one next. So I'd rank this like number 2 out of the Adrienne Young books that I've read, but I would say like this one and the other one that I read this month, I felt like are sort of different and similar in the same way of how I maybe myself envisioned her small towns. But this was good. This was a good book. I'll read you a little bit about it and then you can decide for yourself. Emery Blackwood's life changed forever the night her best friend was found dead, and the love of her life, August Salt, was accused of murdering her. Years later, she is doing what her teenage self swore she would never do, living a quiet existence on the misty, remote shores of Saros, I think that's how you pronounce it, don't get me wrong. Saros Island and running the family business, Blackwood's tea shop, herbal tonics, and tea leaf readings. But when the island, rooted in folklore and magic, begins to show signs of strange happenings, Emery knows that something is coming. Morning, she wakes to find that every single tree on Saros has turned color in a single night. August returns for the first time in 14 years and unearths the past that the town has tried desperately to forget. I'm not gonna read the second little paragraph, I'll leave that up to you. But small town, magic, and mystery all in one book. That's your vibe. I would definitely recommend picking this up. It was good. I think it was a 3.5 or 4-star read from me. Unfortunately, reading 12 books this month and so many of them being like so solid 4.5, 5-star reads. I'm like, I don't want to discount this book. I feel like there are some other ones that I recommend that like just make me giddy. But this book definitely was interesting to read again if you like the magic and the mystery sort of wrapped into a very realistic storyline. So I guess that brings us into the other Adrienne Young book that I read this month, Sea of Unspoken Things. It just came out this month too. And I was so excited because I really loved Unmaking of June Farrow. I liked Spells for Forgetting, and A Sea of Unspoken Things was the last book that I read this month. I felt kind of let down by this book. Sorry, Adrienne. I just was on such like a high from Adrienne Young books that this like brought it down a little bit. And I know that sounds sad, but it definitely was more mystery than I'm used to reading as a physical copy. I think if I would have listened to the audiobook of this for the entire thing, because I listened to about like 2 hours or so of it on audiobook when I was just in the car one day, maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But actually, as a book to read, it wasn't my favorite thing in the entire world. And that's okay. Not every book has to be your cup of tea. I wouldn't say this was not worth my time reading. What I did think was interesting in this book is the main character has a twin who passed away, and she like still feels and is having some of the flashbacks of his memory and other things. So I think that that part was well written, but how the book also ended up shaking out, I was like, it was okay. So if you want to read about James and Johnny Golden, and it's a lot of nature, mystery, and small town, I would say that those are the 3 vibes. But this book was only okay, which I feel so bad saying, but I'm here to give y'all the truth on what I think. It all is opinion based, of course. You could read this book and absolutely love it, and not like Unmaking of June Farrow. Sorry that I keep taking Adrienne Young's books and comparing them. That's just how it is sometimes. So this one just like wasn't my favorite Adrienne Young book, and that's okay. Kennedy Ryan's This Could Be Us is the second book in the Skyland series after Before I Let Go. I read Before I Let Go in November of this year and was absolutely touched by how raw and real it was. I feel like in a lot of the books that are super popular and that I've been reading are women, girls in 20-somethings navigating their first relationship or their first real love, or you know, the epilogue, they're getting married. Kennedy Ryan's books aren't like that, or at least this Skyland series. For example, in the first book, it was a couple navigating divorce and children and running a business together, things that most of these like cushy romance stories don't exactly include. And so I really was interested to pick up the second book, and I was not disappointed. I think Soledad is such a firecracker, so I was so excited that her story was second. There is a third book coming out, I believe in March of this year, the third book in the series, and I do forget the name, but this was so good. With Jonah Cross, oh my goodness, I loved it. It was spicy and steamy and raw and real, same sort of qualities and characteristics that I liked about Before I Let Go were brought right into this book. She also speaks on autism in this book, so I like that she brings in different characteristics of people and different life situations that not all, again, cushy romance books have, and just discusses them in such a good way. I was so touched by this book yet again, and I cannot wait for the third one to come out in the series. I don't know if reading the back of this cover is going to give away the first book, but go check out my November reads video or go look at the first book in this series before you look into this one. Of course, I wouldn't recommend just jumping into the second book in the series because it definitely takes a lot of plot and characters from the other books. I wouldn't say it's in a standalone collection. Some books, you know, you can pick up the second book in a series and not really know because the characters are there but not together, but this one would definitely give away some of the stuff that happens in the first book. So go check out the first book and then pick up the second book and then wait for the third one to come out. Speaking of cushy romance books, I have found a love for Sarah Adams as of last year. I love that she writes romance, but not necessarily with a ton of spice. It's sort of closed-doored spice. Sometimes there are just books that have so much spice that I'm like, it becomes a little too much for me personally. I know some people that's like, if it does not have 4 or 4.5 peppers, like I'm not reading it. I am fine to go without. So I like that she sort of has closed-door romances, or, you know, insinuating, or actually actually, I read 2 Sarah Adams books this month, and this one had some spice. So I was shocked, but not in a bad way. I just really do love her books. But The Off Limits Rule was a meh book for me. It happened in Nashville, I think book 1, or maybe it's book 2. I don't know. I got it off the library and I wanted to read it, and it just 3 stars. Like, it was a fine read. It's a quick read, and it's one of those ones that usually I'll read in between a really good book and something else to sort of take down that book hangover where it's like, you know, it's gonna be good, but it's not gonna take over your whole life. This is not gonna consume your life. You're gonna think that it's a good cheesy romance read, and you're gonna be like, okay, now I'm refreshed, you're ready to pick up another heavy hitter or another whatever. That's what I use Sarah Adams books for. And I'm not saying that it's a waste. I'm actually saying she really does help me get out of book hangovers, because I know I can pick up one of her books and always be entertained. But this is the story of Lucy and Cooper, who is her brother's best friend. Off Limits Rule. So I'll let you look into this one for yourself, but that's just a fun Sarah Adams moment. Speaking of fun moments, here's one that was not fun. I know, you've probably been seeing all these book creators talk your ear off about Onyx Storm for January. I did not do a reread of Fourth Wing or Iron Flame. I did watch a couple of YouTube videos like, oh, can you remind me what happened? That will not prepare you for this. I think Rebecca Yarros, and I love her so much, she could have taken like 1 or 2 more chapters in the beginning of reminding you what things are, not just giving a character's name, but being like, oh, character's name, comma, here's what they do, you know, because I was like, who's that? What's the deal they made? I was Googling character names. I was Googling things that happened. So the first like 15 chapters or so, you know, I'm dedicated. I'm committed to finish this book because I knew it was gonna get good. But it did take me a bit to really like get into this book and dig deep into it. But let me tell you, crushed my heart and soul. Zayden Ryerson, like Rebecca. Hear me closely, hear me. Come here. I need the 4th book immediately. I hear you're saying it's gonna be something like 2027. It can't be happening. Although I would appreciate some more time so that the book can really be thought through. But like, oh my goodness gracious, so no spoilers. I'm not even gonna really do any speaking on this because I feel like A, it speaks for itself. But if you have not even read Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, what I say about this book is not gonna help you at all. So let it be known that while this book kind of got a bad rap, good rap, yeah, definitely the beginning. I don't know if a reread would have helped me with the beginning, but just get through. I mean, Fourth Wing, the whole series is so good. The way she writes her characters, I just love them. Like, same thing. Last Letter. If I actually write a book like The Last Letter, and this book is just, she is multi-talented, and I do love her work, and I just love how she writes the romance in her books, the characters. So this series is so good if you're not one to read until the series is completed, which when I read Fourth Wing, and this is really when I was starting to get into books like just last November, you know, or I guess 2 Novembers ago now, November of 2023, and I saw everyone posting about this book called Iron Flame on release day, right? So I was like, oh, everyone is so hyped about this book, I'm gonna go buy it. And then I saw it was the 2nd in the series. So my silly little mind thought, okay, it's 2 books in a series. I don't know, why did I think there were only 2 books in the series? But now I'm locked in for life. But I believe she said there's gonna be 5 books in the series. This is only book 3. It's so good. It's so good. Once I got through it, like the last third of the book, last half of the book, you know, it really made up for the beginning and the parts where I was like, what are you doing? Like, what does this mean? Then when I was in it, I was in it. Okay, that's all I have to say. Put it back. Second audiobook that I listened to this month is Crying in H Mart. I have seen that this is such a highly rated book. I knew nothing going into this. I didn't even know that this was going to be a memoir, but this was so touching. I don't know who Michelle Zauner is. I didn't know who her mom was. Like, I didn't even know if she was somebody important. I honestly kind of still don't know, but it's a coming of age story about an Asian American, obviously growing up in the Philadelphia area, and how her life played out in her relationship with her mother. And oh my goodness, it was crazy. And I believe that she narrates the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook version of this, but I thought it was really, really well done. So if you're looking for a touching and heartwarming, but also like saddening, there were things that I was listening to in this book. I was like, oh, that is just so sad. And just to think like you want as much time with your mom as you can, and your relationship with your parents are so important. It really makes you think about things. Thank you, Michelle, for this. It definitely touched my heart. I wouldn't say it's anything earth-shattering personally, but also I didn't really know her, but there are definitely some great life lessons and also just different perspective on life from any way that I grew up. And reading about that, I always like to think of those things as eye-opening and taking other people's perspectives into my own. So this was a really good read for me this month. I have been wanting to pick up this book multiple times. I have rented it through the library multiple times, and it never made it to the top of the TBR list. And why not. But now I'm so glad that I accidentally waited because Rebel Witch, the second book in this series, comes out in the month of February, and you better believe I'm reading it on release date. This is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, and wow, if you like romantasy book, this was such a breath of fresh air from most of the romantasy that I have been reading. Just a totally different genre kind of what's going on in the romantasy. I really don't want to spoil this one. I have so much to say about it, especially that I love the Crimson Moth. It's the Crimson Moth series. So I'm gonna read you the inside cover just because I'm worried that I'm gonna spoil it because I'm gonna get too excited. Let me tell you, I've recommended this book to so many people, but again, if you're not a incomplete series person, this maybe isn't for you. That's when I would recommend the Two Twisted Crowns duology. One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns duology. Kind of, sort of similar in the dark, more gothic way, I guess, that these are written. But wow. And not a super thick romantasy, because some of them, like one of the other ones I'm gonna show you in this video, super thick and can be really intimidating. But this was, couldn't put it down, could not put it down. Ooh, I'm just gonna give you the top little blurb. I'm not gonna give you all the details because you know what? I went into this book without details, and I think that that's the way to go. But I'll give you the little synopsis that they give at the top right here. Enemies to lovers doesn't get more high stakes than a witch and a witch hunter falling in love. Best-selling author Kristen Ciccarelli's latest romantic fantasy. I will give you their names, Rune and Gideon. I love them. They're very like regal, almost kind of reminds me of, what would you call that? Like Bridgerton vibes, you know what I mean? Where there's like high class, low class citizens. Like what is that called? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Regal. I'm gonna say it as regal. I know that that's not the right word. Like the Duke books and stuff. You know what I mean. It's kind of got an element of that with the romantasy vibes. It's gonna come to me while I'm talking about one of these last two books. I just know it. Like I said, I read a second Sarah Adams book this month, Beg, Borrow, or Steal. This is the third book in the series When in Rome. As I was picking up this book, I realized I never read Practice Makes Perfect, which is the second book. So I read When in Rome, I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal, didn't read book number 2, which I do have on my Libby now. But then as I was leaving my review, or like leaving my stars for this book, somebody else commented and was like, first book and the third book are great, I hated the second. So I was like, maybe it's a sign that I didn't read the second book. I have been reading a lot about small towns. Apparently Rome, Kentucky is a small town, and this book just came out this month. But what I will say is she put a little thing in the beginning of her book, because like I said, Sarah Adams books are closed door romances usually, but she put a disclaimer, a content warning at the beginning of this book. I'm so excited for you to meet Emily Jackson. There are heavier topics, potential triggers, and she kind of lists them. But then it does say, if you prefer to read closed door romances and would like to modify this story so that you are not involved in the details of their intimacy scenes, chapters 25 and 32 should be skipped. Happy reading. So when I read that, when I started reading this book, I was like, shut the front door. Like I don't necessarily need not closed door things, but I was just so shocked. But I love that she put that in the beginning, because I think she probably realized a lot of her readers don't expect that. So you really could skip those chapters if that's not what you want to read. I thought that this book was so sweet. Sort of like an enemies to lovers, maybe definitely enemies to lovers, but every second of this book I ate up. I would 10 out of 10 recommend this book over the other Off Limits rule book that I read. I just thought this book was a little bit more well done, and it was such an easy, fun read. I kind of just love an enemies to lovers, because you're like, okay, I know it's gonna happen. Like, when's it gonna happen? When are they gonna realize that they're in love with each other? And that is for sure what I got out of this book. I would say the other Sarah Adams is more of a fake dating premise almost, or like a sneaking around dating. They're pretending they're not really together, but they're together, that kind of a thing. But Emily and Jackson, two teachers in the small town, and their story from the time they met in college, or they guess do flashbacks to that all the way up to the present day, where they both work in their small town at their elementary school as, I believe, second grade teachers. I could be mistaken, but I believe it's second grade. And this was just such a fun romance read. Again, this got me through after Onyx Storm, I believe. I was like, I just need a really easy, light book, romance cheese, all of it, and it gave it to me so good. I would say to read When in Rome. I don't know about Practice Makes Perfect. I can't make a judgment on that. You could totally read this as a standalone. You would just maybe spoil what happens, or like how the relationships end up in the other two books if you read this one first, but not too big of a deal. And finally, why did I leave this book for last? Because truly it was an expected and unexpected read at the same time. Don't let the cover fool you or deter you, because that's what kept me off this book for so long. And then when I saw people continually talking about how amazing this book was, finally picked it up. Callie Hart's Quicksilver. Did you know that this was a self-published book? It was this good, and so I'm like, how did an agency not pick up this book right away? Of course, she's now signed with Forever, but oh Oh my goodness freaking gracious. It's a big book. It's a big book. When I saw, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many pages it is. 600 and something, yeah. 609 pages. I was like, that's a bit of an undertaking. Like, is this really what I want to read? Absolutely, yes, it is. Yes, it is absolutely what you want to read. It is a romantasy. There is a second book coming out in August or September of this year. I can't believe I'm giving you all these fun facts about release dates. Like, I'm just so into it. This year, I'm really trying to stay on top of release dates for books that I loved, that have a second book, third book, etc. coming out. Let me not spoil the story of Saris and Kingfisher, but woo! Wow. Just wow. Like, this made me feel things that I haven't really felt since reading the Throne of Glass series. So if that gives you any idea into how good this book is, let it be that. Okay, I'll read you a little bit of the back. 24-year-old Saris Fane is good at keeping secrets. No one knows the strange powers she possesses or the fact that she has been picking pockets and stealing from the Undying Queen's reservoirs for as long as she can remember. In the land of the unforgiving desert, there isn't much a girl would do for a glass of water. But sooner or later, every secret comes out. When Saris comes face to face with death himself, she inadvertently reopens a gateway between realms and is transported to a land of ice and snow. The Fae have always been the stuff of myth, of legends, of nightmares, but it turns out they're real, and Saris has landed right in the middle of a centuries-long conflict that might just get her killed. The first of her kind to tread the frozen mountains of Ivalia in over 1,000 years, Saris mistakenly binds herself to Kingfisher, a handsome Fae warrior who has secrets and nefarious agendas of his own. He will use her alchemist magic to protect his people, no matter what it costs him or her. Oh my gosh. I would say if there's one book to pick up, it's this, but I don't know, between The Last Letter, The Heartless Hunter, Onyx Storm, if you're in that series, like, so many good books this month. This is your introduction into romantasy. It may be a bit too much, or it might be just the perfect thing. Like, I'm contradicting myself all over the place, but truly, I ate this book up. It also was definitely helpful that I was reading this on a super long international flight, which is why I banged it out so fast, but oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait for book 2. I keep saying that about all the other books that are coming out, like, after the ones that I've read this month, but truly I had such a good month of reading, and this was one of the big proponents of that. And that's it. Those are the 12 books that I read in the month of January. There's so many February releases I'm looking forward to this month. Rebel Witch, which is the second book in the Crimson Moth series by Kristen Ciccarelli, is coming out. Ali Hazelwood, I love her. She has a book coming out, actually, by the time this video is uploaded, probably the next day, called Deep End, which I'm really excited about. Tessa Bailey has Dream Girl Drama coming out, which is in the series of something fan and au pair affair, I forget. So I'll probably pick that one up. I told myself I was gonna swear off Tessa Bailey books after the atrocious one that I read in December called Window Shopping. Atrocious, not gonna lie. There's no sugarcoating that. BK Borison has another book coming out, her Love Light Farm series. I started years ago. Oh my gosh, I just love it. Called First Time Caller. Really excited about that book. There was one other one coming out. I forget, and I might regret forgetting, but so many good books on my February TBR. I've actually already started one that I've been listening to an audiobook called Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. Holy smokes, so stinking good. But those are the books that I've read. Again, I hope that this gives you a bit of inspiration, and just to show you that I used to read a handful of books here and there, like laying out at the beach, you know, the usual places where you might find somebody read a book. And in this last year, I have found such peace in reading, even if you're reading spicy things or things about fae or sad memoirs or sad military stories. I mean, there's so many genres to pick from. Don't just stop after one. Give yourself a couple different types of books to read to see if you can find something. I'm telling you, I crave reading a book more than I do watching whatever new season of, let's just say, The Bachelor is on the TV. So there's my 2 cents about books and about reading. And if you're seeing this video, you probably already like it. So I hope that I've given you some fun stuff for your TBR. Of course, add me on Goodreads. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the video. I'll probably film another clip to put back in there that you'll already have seen that says follow me on Goodreads. I love it. Or add me as a friend. Like, I just add everybody back as friends because I get so much inspiration from it. You guys are reading as well. And then you can stay more up to date with kind of what I'm reading because I log them as soon as I start them and finish them. And I also keep them updated on my Amazon storefront. So if you're ever wanting to purchase a book and support me at no extra cost, I always have them linked on there. And of course, those usually come overnight or next day or sometimes 2-day shipping. They come really fast if you don't want to be waiting a long time time for a book and usually have better deals than places like Barnes & Noble. Anyway, off my soapbox. I love you guys so much. If nobody has told you today, I'm so proud of you. Whether you've read 0 books in the last year, 100 books in the last year, or you're just getting started in your reading journey, or you're just along for the fun, I'm so happy that you're here. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Happy reading.